Shall I start? D. Jaya Nilo Premadana Karuna Prachur Drum. Jaya Nilo Premadana Karuna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chaya Thakur Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kaha Dasa Raghunatha Bhatta Pavan Kaha Mora Bhatta Juga Kaha Kabira Ekakale Kota Gela Gorana Taraj Pasamne Kuti Bo Mata Annale Pashibo Goranga Gunera Nidhi Kotangele Pamo Se Samba Sangira Sange Je Koilo Bila Se Sangana Paya Kande Narottamadas Jaya Nilo Prema Dhana Karuna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chaya Thakur Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. Shall I read the English, Maharaj? Okay. No, actually just play it. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Can you take care of this too? And you have your mic? Okay. Hare Krishna. It's a bit loud. We could turn it down just a touch. Just a touch means not off. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, that's good. Alrighty. So these great personalities, I don't think we need all that, in all honesty, but go ahead. It's all right. Thanks. They are not bound by time and space, and therefore they're accessible to us. It's like a radio station. The signal's always going out, but you got to tune your radio. So the mercy is flowing. But we have to have, now you could turn it up just a touch. You always go too, it's all right. Thank you. So this is a chance on these days to pray for mercy, pray to become qualified to receive that mercy. These are, every day is a festival in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said. That's perfect, thanks Prabhu. But these are special days, like Krishna's full, fuller, and fullest, you know, in Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan. Wrap your mind around that one. So every day is auspicious, but these days are even more auspicious. We have to be eager to advance in spiritual life. If you have a rocket ship, as long as it's within the gravitational pull of the Earth, as soon as you shut off that engine, it will fall back. Its natural status is to be drawn back. You know, it's going up, you shut off the engine, it'll fall back down because it's under the influence of the gravitational pull. Similarly, I mean, you're all great devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who've taken birth to spread Krishna consciousness, but I know my condition. And I am still under the influence of the modes of material nature. And if I'm not pushing forward, what will happen? Yeah, is anybody out there? Hello? If you're not pushing forward, we're going to fall back. Daniel, if we're not pushing forward, what will happen to us? Exactly. So the mercy is there, just like the radio signal is there, but you got to tune in. So we have, like Malati Devi's famous pastimes, she tells him when Prabhupada came out of the Pandal tent in South India, I forget exactly where, I think Hyderabad, and the man grabbed Prabhupada's feet, full dandavats, held Prabhupada's feet, and said, "Swami, Swami, save me." And Prabhupada said quite confidently, "Yes, I can save you." But anyone know the rest of what Prabhupada said other than Dravida? You have to do the work. I can save you. If I drop if you fall into a well, if I fall into a well, and Govardhan says, okay, well, I better help him. So he lowers me a rope, other than Vijay and Dravida Prabhu. If he lowers me a rope, that's necessary, but what else is necessary? I got to grab onto it and climb out. And the 2 inches, Rupa Goswami, when Krishna kept being bound 2 inches short, we're coming up to Kartik soon, Kartik Vrata. So what were the 2 inches? They represent a lot of things, but what are they? It's 2 fingers is how it's described. These 2 fingers. Now, of course, you can't see from that distance, but you've got your own prototype there, your own hand. Daniel, are these 2 fingers the same size? One's longer than the other. So there's 2 things that allow us to go back home to Godhead, just like 2 fingers, like the rope was we're 2 inches short. One is our personal endeavor. That's the smaller finger. The longer finger is Krishna's mercy. But the 2 both need to be there, both our endeavor and Krishna's mercy. So that's one of the reasons these days matter. So today we're honoring the disappearance day of Srila Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis, the direct disciples and the missionaries of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who he sent to renovate the places of Vrindavan and to establish the Siddhanta of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Okay, so in 1503 and 1579. He appeared in 1503. There's different dates given, but this is the date given by Srila Prabhupada and Krishnadas Kaviraj. So I'm going to go with that one, personally. Okay, next. And it's significant. You'll see why. You notice these 2, these are cuckoos. So why does that matter? We'll find out soon. Next. So the sources for this presentation, they come from that fantastic book by Mahanidhi Swami, the Vrindavan Samadhis, Gaudiya Samadhis in Vrindavan. And also, it's amazing what's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So from both in the verses and in Prabhupada's purports from Chaitanya. So that's the other thing, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then somehow or other, I don't even know how I got it, but Raghunath Maharaj gave a series of lectures, talks, in Chaupati on the Goswamis, on each of their either disappearance or appearance day, and someone put it together into a little booklet. It's never come out officially. I don't know why, but that's the other source. So those 3 things, and therefore you can be in confidence in what's here. Next. Thanks. So his father is Tapan Mishra. And Tapan Mishra was living in East Bengal, which is now Bangladesh. And this is what it looks like. It looked like that then, and it looks like that now, once you get outside of the hellish cities. So Mahaprabhu ordered Tapan Mishra, you go to Varanasi. Varanasi is also called Banaras. It's also, in the old times, it's called Kasi, when you read about the king of Kasi in Krishna book. So Kasi, Varanasi, is Banaras, and it's in UP, it's in northeastern India. Yeah, kind of just below Bihar. So there it is. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled at him and sent him to Banaras. He's there with all the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So many great devotees appeared in Bengal, and all of a sudden he's being sent to Banaras? Why? And Lord Chaitanya simply smiled. Next. Was he banished? You'll find out. Now, Banaras is on the banks of the Ganga, and the city is filled with Shaivites, followers of Lord Shiva, and impersonalists. So it was more like, this is the Vishwanath, right here is the Vishwanath temple of Lord Shiva. And so why, it's like, you can imagine being sent, if you were sent from Vrindavan to I don't know where. We don't even have a similar place nowadays. Okay, next. So the main Vishnu temple was called the Bindu Madhava temple. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anyway, you'll find out in a moment. So the original temple was torn down by Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb was the grandson of Akbar, the Mughal emperor. And he was a fanatic. Well, Prabhupada said he was Kamsa come again. And we're gonna run into Aurangzeb later on in the story. But this is the Bindu Madhava deity here. The deity is a Shalagram Shila. It's Lord Vishnu, self-manifest. And it's said that a drop of Lord Vishnu's mercy, Madhava, can relieve all distress, that's the negative, and can give great good fortune. So Bindu Madhava. There's a number of reasons for the name Bindu Madhava, but that's one. So that is the Vaishnava temple, Vishnu temple of Vishnu, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would visit. Next. So this is the Dashwamedha Ghat, where, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Rupa Goswami. So there's a lot that actually went on in Benares. And this is the bathing ghat. People, you go there for worshiping your ancestors. People do, if your funeral or Shraddha ceremony is done in Benares or Varanasi, it's considered very auspicious. So every night there's this big puja going. The Ganga is right here, right over, what happened here? Yeah, right here is the Ganga. So here's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructing Rupa Goswami. He's nicely shaved up, ready to go. So next. So it turns out that Tapan Mishra was being sent beforehand to create a base for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for all of his activities. Mahaprabhu met Sanatana Goswami again. After meeting him in Bengal, he met him again after Sanatana Goswami got himself free from the service of the Nawab. So he met at Tapan Mishra's house. And he stayed in Benares for 2 months at Tapan Mishra's house. So Raghunatha Bhatta is the son of Tapan Mishra. He was a young boy for 2 months. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was staying at his house. And here is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meeting Sanatana Goswami. Next. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in Benares, I'm thinking of the 3 different names, in Benares, big kirtan parties. Wherever he went was followed by hundreds and thousands of people, and it was a transcendental tumult overtook the town. And so the impersonalists, they were headed by Prakasananda Saraswati Thakur. He had 10,000 disciples. And as they often, we need a clock. And we need a clock I can see, which limits the field. Oh, that little tiny thing? All righty, that's not going to do any good. We don't have one with a light? Anyway, don't worry about it. Go over and we'll sort it out. Yeah, that's useless to me. And Tapas has got, you need 4 hands, don't you, Tapas? You do, it's all right. Don't worry about it. So the, Prabhupada was in, I was actually there. A professor came, but this is the old LA temple when it was on La Cienega. And there was a professor from Caltech, and he was a Sanskrit professor. And evidently some of his students had come to the temple somehow or other and had a great time, kirtan, prasadam, full of life. Instead of, what is the sound of one hand clapping, they actually got 2 hands clapping at kirtan. So they were having a great time. So the he'd come to straighten out his sentimental students who'd been, bamboozled by this Swami from India, Srila Prabhupada. And he, Prabhupada gave his talk, and as Prabhupada would do, he asked for questions. And this guy stood up, this professor, and he said, basically he said that kirtan is just sentiment. This is just sentiment. It's for, old ladies and children, but not for philosophers, and you should be studying Vedanta. And Prabhupada, it was so blissful Prabhupada, the man was standing initially. The audience was sitting, and he stood up to ask Prabhupada his question. And while he was droning on, Prabhupada wouldn't even look at him. Prabhupada was just looking at the deities. You had that noble profile of Prabhupada. He was just chanting japa, looking at the deities. And when the man, he said, "Are you finished?" The man said, "One more thing, Swami." And then Prabhupada said, "Are you finished now?" And Prabhupada let out this transcendental barrage. Because the man said, that this is all sentiment, and, you should be studying Vedanta. And Prabhupada quoted from Vedanta Sutra. He quoted from this Upanishad and that, without even touching Gita, without even touching Bhagavatam, without even touching the Puranas, all on Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra. Prabhupada just smashed the guy. And first the guy was very arrogant, then he was kind of crouched, then he was kneeling, then he was sitting. If he could have melted into the floor, he would have. And to the man's credit, at the end of the thing, Prabhupada finished. And Prabhupada said, "Do you have anything else to say?" And he said, "Swamiji, can we have kirtan?" Which means he accepted. It was actually very blissful. So they were accusing Chaitanya, but what is the ripened fruit? Anyone know, other than Dravida and Vijay, what is the natural commentary? Who wrote the Vedas? Oh, help me out. Vyasadeva. Okay. And what is considered when he completed all the Vedas and was not feeling satisfied, including writing Vedanta Sutra? What did he write? Srimad Bhagavatam. And what is considered as the natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra? The Srimad Bhagavatam. It begins with the exact same line as Vedanta Sutra. Bhagavatam begins. So the Vaishnava, anyway, we're off the track. But the point is that Chaitanya, the culmination of Vedanta Krit Veda Vedeva Chaham is to know Krishna. That's the conclusion of the Vedanta Sutra. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's taking up the conclusion of Tushanti Cha Ramanti Cha, chanting and dancing in ecstasy, and Prakasananda Saraswati and Benares being a hotbed of impersonalists, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't associate with him. So it's a long story. We've got a lot of ground to cover. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was invited by Prakasananda Saraswati Thakur that you come sit with us and discuss Vedanta Sutra. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we'll see that picture in a moment. We'll go to go next. So you can see, here's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He sat where all the chairs were. Where all the shoes were. So Prakasananda Saraswati Thakur, to his credit, he came and said, "No, Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya, what was his sannyas name? Did you come sit here with us?" So go back to back to where we were. So you see here, but what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do when he was sitting in their assembly? Before he began speaking, he was glowing, because they're all after Brahman. They're trying to find the white light, the light, the truth, the Brahman. So he began to glow like the Brahman effulgence. So they were all transiently, and that glow was resting on the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So next. And of course, it's a long story. There's that Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, that little booklet he used to have us distribute on Sankirtan. It's a great little book. And it's the conversation from Chaitanya Charitamrita of Prakasananda. So Prakasananda Saraswati Thakur was converted along with his 10,000 disciples, and they joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Kirtan. And so Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami, as the small child, the young boy of Tapan Mishra, he was there. He was hearing all those discussions and carrying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's water pot, and there's so many different assisting. Next. Raghunatha Bhatta was a brilliant student and a very accomplished scholar. Even at a young age, he'd mastered Sanskrit and so many different things. He was a brilliant child. Next. And he offered, this is all from Chaitanya Charitamrita, all types of menial servants to Lord Chaitanya. He was washing his dishes. He was massaging his legs. So you can just imagine he was there assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You know, as a small child, a young boy, intelligent young boy. What's another intelligent young boy who by menial service became perfect? Dravida, Narada Muni. So that service to the great souls, the door of liberation becomes opened. So you can imagine he heard the conversation with Sanatana Goswami. He was hearing the conversations with Rupa Goswami. He was hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeat the impersonalists. So for 2 months. Okay, next. And the whole family would take the remnants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, they would serve Mahaprabhu his lunch prasadam and evening prasadam, breakfast prasadam, and then family would enthusiastically take the remnants. Next. And Prabhupada said, if you eat off a diseased person's plate, what will happen? You get their disease. Now, Dravida, you got to back off because I want their brains to work. Well, you would think, but you never know. I want their brains to work. So if you eat off a diseased person's plate, you'll catch their disease. Now, every disease, and what are we doing when we take prasadam? Where does it go? What makes it prasadam? Yeah, it's been offered to Krishna from bhog to prasadam. So we're eating off Krishna's plate, right? Now, what does that mean? What does that mean if we eat off Krishna's plate? We catch Krishna's disease. And every disease has symptoms. You have a fever, cough, upset stomach, so many different things. Every disease has symptoms. So if you eat off a diseased person's plate, you catch their disease and their symptoms. If you eat off Krishna's plate, you'll catch Krishna's disease and their symptoms. Anyone know what the symptoms are? Prabhupada said, Sat Chit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And then Prabhupada waited a perfect theatrical pause and said, and if you catch Krishna's disease, there is no cure. So that disease we wanted. So they were taking Mahaprabhu's Mahaprasadam. Next. Thanks, Tapas. So after some time, he grew up a little bit, and then Raghunatha Bhatta joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri for 8 months. Next. And due to his excellent singing, Lord Chaitanya named him Kirtan Acharya. We'll read about it later on, but it said that his voice was so sweet, it sounded like a cuckoo. You can do a Google on your phone, and you can ask it to play a cuckoo. It's very cuckoo, cuckoo. Of course, my voice isn't sweet, but it's very, very sweet. So he sang so sweetly. He was called Kirtan Acharya by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Next. And Raghunatha Bhatta was an expert cook. Whatever he prepared tasted just like nectar. Next. You see all these spices? Devotees, how about following a recipe? You know? And there's a recipes that we have so many cookbooks. You have Yamuna's cookbook. Prabhupada one time, because devotees were just speculating this and that, and my grandmother used cinnamon, and I'll use this and that, and we'll throw in a little bit. He had us remove all the spices from the kitchen except for turmeric, chili, cumin, and asafoetida, hing. And he said his sister cooked with 4 spices, and everything tasted different, and everything tasted like nectar. So there's an art to these things. Follow a recipe. Look at those who know how to cook and learn from them. It's not complicated. Okay, next. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would accept with great satisfaction all the food he prepared. After the Lord was satisfied, Raghunatha Bhatta would eat his remnants. Next. After 8 months in Jagannath Puri with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and all the other members of the Panchatattva, just imagine what the scene was like. So after 8 months, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bade farewell to Raghunatha Bhatta, the Lord flatly forbade him to marry. Do not marry, the Lord said. So that was his instruction to Raghunatha. Prabhupada points out that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised Junior Haridas because he even looked slightly at a woman. And she was an old woman. And, but he named each of the children of Shivananda Sen. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt differently according to the mentality and psychology, the proper position of the different individuals. So some people get married, and Prabhupada said a marriage, a good wife, good marriage, good husband is a fortress against material desires. But in the case of, it's much easier if one stays a brahmachari and stays, and becomes a sannyasi. It's a very clean, straight line. But one has to be up to it. Otherwise, better to get married, be an honest householder, and advance steadily in spiritual life, no problem. But for Raghunatha Bhatta, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu flatly forbade him to marry. Don't marry. Next. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Raghunatha Bhatta, when you go home, when you return home, serve your aged father and mother, who are devotees, and study Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure Vaishnava. And the point was, and Prabhupada says in the purport, not that we just serve all of our relatives and serve, that's not what it's all about. That do. What does Bhagavad Gita mean? They'll all tell you. Oh, Bhagavad Gita means do your duty. It means take care of your wife, take care of your children. Was Balaram who was giving class the other day? When Prabhupada was Prabhupada was staying at somebody's house, and he was introducing, this is my son-in-law, this is my grandson, this is my nephew, and Prabhupada said, Prabhupada was very polite, but then Prabhupada said, actually what he's saying is, this is my sex life. He said it later on, this is how I've expanded my family. So what, So, fine, do your duty, but that's not the fruit of the whole thing. That the whole goal of life is to just be like a hamster on the wheel, and okay, fine, to turn the wheel. So what does that mean? So because they were devotees, Prabhupada says, Vaishnava Seva is an essential element of advancement in spiritual life. So because his parents, Tapan Mishra was his father, so his mother and father were great devotees, he said, go back, you serve your parents, and when they've passed away, you come back and join me. And in the meantime, while you're there, study Srimad Bhagavatam. Next. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu concluded, come again to Nilachala Jagannath Puri. After saying this, the Lord put his own neck beads on Raghunatha Bhatta's neck, took off his neck beads and garland and protect. Just like our Nisringananda, the ITV Nisringananda, he was a young boy when he joined. His parents, especially his mother, completely flipped, caused so much distress that the devotee said, Prabhupada, you got to tell this boy to go back. So Prabhupada called him into his room and said, really, you've got to go back, because and he didn't want to go. He started to cry. And Prabhupada said, no, it's only, how old are you? And I think he was 16 or something. Said, so you're just 2 years, and then you come back and enjoy. You can come and visit the temple. You just stay there and finish your high school or whatever you had to finish. And he said, give me some mercy, please, Prabhupada, how will I do it? And Prabhupada, that's how he got the name Nisringananda. So in the same way, he's sending him back. You take care of your parents, but don't worry, you'll be all right. You study Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him his own neck beads. Next. Then his parents passed away in Kasi, Benares, and he became detached. He therefore returned to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, giving up all relationships with his home. Of course, this is Jagannath Puri. Next. Jagannath Puri is known amongst the Vaishnava as the place of tears, because you've got Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's crying for Krishna, and you've got Jagannath is in separation, Srimati Radharani Kurukshetra, pulling Krishna back to Vrindavan. So the ras there is crying in separation. That's the particular ras there. So he came back, he stayed for 8 months, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him the following order. I'm sorry, next. My dear Raghunath, on my order, I don't know how it all turned blue, but that's another story. My dear Raghunath, on my order, go to Vrindavan and live there under the care of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. So he sent him to Vrindavan. Now what I'd underscored here, but we'll have to fix that. This was, whatever. On my order, go to Vrindavan. So we have devotees, well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he sent Raghunatha to Vrindavan, Raghunatha Bhatta. So I'm going to Vrindavan too. I'm not going out on Sankirtanam. I'm not worshiping the deities. I'm not going to be surrounded by Maya. And I'm going to Vrindavan to read Bhagavatam. So when we decide, I decide, an individual decides, oh, I'm not staying here in the West with all this Maya, and particularly a temple president or temple commander telling me what to do, head pujari. No, I'm going to Vrindavan, and it's bona fide. What is the missing element indicated in this verse? What is that missing element? Yeah, when your spiritual master tells you, you go to Vrindavan and study, then you go, no problem. When he tells you to come back, you come back. Okay, next. We don't whimsically do this and that. That's the path to hell. Even Jesus is the path to hell is broad and wide, and the path to heaven is narrow and straight. You follow the order of your spiritual master. So, at a festival, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had been given some unspiced betel and a garland of tulsi leaves 14 cubits long. A cubit is 1.5 feet. So 21 feet long. Because Lord Jagannath's big. It was Lord Jagannath's tulsi garland. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the garland and betel to Raghunatha Bhatta, who accepted them as a worshipful deity and preserved them very carefully. This is, in case you didn't figure it out, this is betel nuts, cut betel nut. And you shave it and turns your teeth red. So you have to be a transcendental. It rots your teeth out. You have to be a transcendentalist. But it's offered to the deities. Next. In Vrindavan, you should chant the Hare Krishna mantra 24 hours a day and read Srimad Bhagavatam continuously. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will soon bestow His mercy upon you. That bestowing of mercy is that you realize the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and your place within it. All of Vrindavan becomes revealed. So this is, you'll see Vrindavan as it actually is. Next. We have a bright future if we just stay on the path. The future for the devotees, just imagine, we become filled with ecstasy, freed from Bindu Madhava. Now, Bindu Madhava, I think I said it, but it means just a drop removes all in us of the mercy of of Krishna, removes all distress and brings all good fortune. So we have a bright future. When reciting Srimad Bhagavatam in the company of Rupa and Sanatan, Raghunatha Bhatta would become overwhelmed with ecstatic love for Krishna. So you can imagine the association in Vrindavan, and they're reading Bhagavatam and discussing what have you written and crying in ecstasy. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he experienced the symptoms of ecstatic love, tears, trembling, and faltering of the voice. His eyes filled with tears and his throat choked, and thus he could not recite Bhagavatam. He was stunned in ecstasy. And it actually got in the way of his ecstasy. Next. I think we talk about it somewhere along the line. Go ahead, Prabhupada, next. Yes. There was the man who came to the LA temple, an Indian gentleman, happened to be Indian, could have been anything, and he would come with his assistant and his acolyte, or his, whatever it is, his aspiring disciple. And he would come before the deities. I was there. And he would fall down on the ground and roll around and, oh, Radha Krishna. He put on a whole show. And we didn't know anything. We thought, well, gee, maybe it's true. And one time he was rolling around. He knocked over the Charnamrita stand. Made a big mess. So Karanda, who was no fool, Karanda asked Prabhupada, explained to Prabhupada what was going on, later on in Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada said, beat him with a stick. Prabhupada said, if he's in ecstasy, he won't notice. Now, Prabhupada didn't mean beat him with a stick, but he meant, just... So the next morning, or next time the guy came, he went into his so-called faux ecstasy, rolled around, and Karanda reached her, hey, snap out of it. And the guy got up immediately. He was indignant that, what? And he stormed out, and we never saw him again. If he was in ecstasy, he wouldn't have noticed, So... I saw Prabhupada twice. once in Mayapur and once in Vrindavan, become stunned in ecstasy. And the one in L.A., Prabhupada came, he greeted the deities, came to Charnamrita, sat down on the Vyasasam. And in those days, he was teaching us Ishopanishad. He was working through the Ishopanishad mantras. And Prabhupada, Om Purnam, we would hear that oceanic voice of the ages. Prabhupada's voice would roll out. And but this particular day, there was no sound. We were used to hear, we were offering obeisances, and we were used to hear Prabhupada chanting the verses, and then we'd join in. And Prabhupada was sitting completely straight and looking right at the deities. There was only little Rukmini Dwarkanath. There wasn't the big deities. Dwarkadish, it was little deities. And Prabhupada, we noticed tears were pouring down Prabhupada's cheek. He literally could not speak. And did he revel in it? Did he put it, of course it wasn't WhatsApp in those days, and on his face page, I was in ecstasy, and here's snaps, and you too. No. I personally, Prabhupada took a deep breath and he suppressed the whole thing. It was getting in the way of his service to his Guru Maharaj, to train his disciples. Like Daruka, when he goes into ecstatic, he's fanning Krishna's servant and charioteer driver. And when he goes into ecstasy, he can't fan properly. And he curses those symptoms of ecstasy. So it made me think of this verse by Bilva Mangala Thakur from Krishna Karnamrita. If I'm engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily I can perceive your presence everywhere. So when he's in that state, and as far as liberation is concerned, I think that liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. And all material conveniences of dharma, artha, and kama stand with her. So all these symptoms of ecstasy and mystic powers, they're just subordinate byproducts of pure Krishna prema. They come automatically, and sometimes they just get in the way. Next. Thank you. His voice was as sweet as a cuckoo's, and he would recite each verse of Srimad Bhagavatam in 3 or 4 tunes. Thus his recitations were very sweet to hear. And these are the right type of birds. We had to search around. These are Himalayan cuckoos, and they sing very sweetly. So he had a very sweet voice and 4 different tunes, 3 to 4 tunes. No, that's just, I don't know what that is. Birds and beasts would shiver in bliss, and stones would melt by hearing his recitation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Next. Just, you can see, when it says that, I'm sorry, go back. Sorry, Tapas. That Krishna's actually in the pages of Bhagavatam. When the devotees were traveling, they were all getting little Gaurnitai deities, and then it was, taking care of the deities properly. Prabhupada was getting so many questions. Prabhupada said, actually, when you travel, you can offer prasadam to the Bhagavatam. It's Krishna. You can offer the arti, you can offer, not that we shouldn't have Gaurnitai deities and all that, but actually the Bhagavatam, you can offer prasadam, you can offer arti. It's Krishna. Krishna's in the pages of Bhagavatam, and if one chants purely, he becomes revealed. Next. Thanks. Thus Raghunatha Bhatta surrendered fully to the lotus feet of Lord Govinda, and those lotus feet became his life and soul. Next. And it's not that he was, well, we got to run along because of time. Next. Yeah, next, thanks. Raghunatha Bhatta ordered his disciples to construct a temple for Govinda. I should say that, of course, Rupa Goswami's Govinda Dev was originally installed by Krishna's great-grandson, Vaisnavas. And then the deity was lost. You figure over 5,000 years, so many things happen. They hide the Muslims invade, and they have to run, and they hide the deity, and then the pujari, so many different things happen over the course of time. Deities manifest and unmanifest. So because I started, I'll finish. Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan was sitting and chanting, and he noticed that this cow would come every day, a beautiful white Sarabi cow, would come and stop at this one place, and all the milk from his udder would come out. He was bathing this one spot. So Rupa Goswami, completely in tune to these higher things, called the villagers, and they dug up the spot, and that's where they found the Govinda Dev deity. So you'll see a picture of Govindadev shortly. So Raghunath Bhatta came and he was assisting Rupa Goswami in the worship of Govindadev. Oh, so there it is. This is Govindadev in Jaipur. He's about 5 feet tall. Beautiful deity. So Raghunath Bhatta ordered his disciples to construct a temple for Govinda. Rupa Goswami was keeping, he made a nice kunja, out of, wood, brush, what would you call it? Bushes and stuff like that. And he made a beautiful, a little kunj. But, they're living in Vrindavan. They're Goswamis under a different tree every night on a loincloth. So he wasn't able to construct a very beautiful temple, the temple you're going to see. So his disciple, Raghunath, his Shiksha disciple, was assisting Rupa Goswami in so many ways, and he was assisting him in the worship of Govindadev. So he ordered, this is Raghunath Bhatta, ordered his disciples. He had some wealthy disciples. There's a whole story about that, but we'll tell that some other time. Raghunath Bhatta ordered his disciples to construct the temple of Govindadev. And remember, he was an excellent cook. So he was cooking first-class prasadam for beautiful big Govindadev. And then he made various ornaments. He made a beautiful jeweled flute. He made earrings shaped like a shark's. So many things. Next. He served Govindaji in Vrindavan for 40 years non-stop. That's dedication. So here you see beautiful Govindadev. He has a nice pearls or rubies they put under his nose, and we don't know what the flute looked like, but that's solid gold and rubies, that flute. Yeah, all those jewels are real. Those are the real deal, all of those jewels. Next. So this is, remember Aurangzeb, who knocked down the Bindu Madhava temple, the Mughal emperor, the grandson of Akbar. We'll talk about Akbar in a moment. So the Aurangzeb was, this is the Govindadev Mandir built by Raghunath Das Goswami for Rupa Goswami's Govindadev. Now you notice it's flat here. That's because Aurangzeb, it's about, I don't know how many miles, and drive time doesn't count in India because there can be a cow on the road and you got to stop and lose a half hour. But not far from Vrindavan is Agra, which was one of the Mughal capitals. And Aurangzeb, even though some of these Muslim rulers were tyrants, they were highly educated. And he was an astronomer. And on the roof of his palace at night with a telescope, he would meet with different astronomers and they would talk about different stuff. And they made astrological calculations and so many things, And he asked, what is this low star in the sky I don't see moving? They said, oh, that is the Govindadev temple that's opened. On top of the Govindadev temple, like the old-fashioned lighthouse was mirrors with the, I've done some research work on it. You can get it's a long story, but it's a fact. Old-fashioned lighthouses, you just trust me. In the literature, it describes that amongst all the hundreds of Brahmins worshiping Govindadev, on top of the temple where the chakra is, they also had like a lighthouse, which is you build a fire and you have a mirror, and it projects the light very, very far. So it was so opulent on top of the Govindadev temple, they had like this light for like a lighthouse. And Aurangzeb, I think probably 40 miles away, something like that, on the roof of his palace said, what is this low star that's not moving? What planet is that? They said, no. That is the light on the newly opened Govindadev temple. And not newly opened, it opened for some time then. But he became so agitated that a Hindu temple, in his mind, was so opulent, he sent his soldiers to attack. Jai Singh, it's a long story. Anyway, the deity was saved. Govindadev was moved to Jaipur. But he dismantled the top 5 stories of the Govindadev temple. That was their program. Just like you've got those Muslims now that are blowing up, the beautiful Buddhist statues, the Taliban. So they, the Buddhist statues in Afghanistan, just blew them up. Beautiful. A World Heritage Site, just blew it up. So they knocked off the top 5 stories. So next. And this is the front view. You can see they knocked off the top 5 stories. Next. Actually, they moved on to Madan Mohan Temple. And as they were trying to, Sanatana Goswamis, there was an earthquake and all of Vrindavan began to shake. And they fled and never came back, save the other deities in the other temples. So this is just a side view. This is here, if you look, this is the size of a person. This is the inner sanctum. This dome goes all the way up. It's a 1,000-petal lotus carved. It's just unbelievable carving. And this is just the side. This is all solid stone. There's not one single piece of steel in this thing. It's all weighted on top of each other. It's an architectural masterpiece. The Man Singh, who was Akbar's military commander, because you got to keep an army busy, in between wars and battles. Otherwise, idle mind is devil's workshop. So well, we'll get there in a second. But Man Singh had some of his soldiers help construct the temple because they had to haul the stone. It was a huge endeavor. Next. Usually you see those temples in India, and they're beautiful, but they've got all different devas and dancing girls and, all that kind of stuff, the different layers as you go up the different planetary systems. But here, Rupa Goswami, they have cowherd boys. It's got cowherd boys and gopas because it's in the mood of Vrindavan and Madan Mohan. This is just to give an idea of the stonework. Next. The quality of the carving, it's considered the apex of Mughal India's skill and design work. I mean, just look at this is part of that ceiling. But it's an Indian National Heritage Site, and it's soon to be a World Heritage Site. It's such a beautiful, the stonework is unexcelled in India, the carving. Next. So here's why this matters. Akbar, this is a picture of Akbar on the right, this emperor. And just to give you an idea of the power of the six Goswamis and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the influence they had. I'll show you a map in a second. But Akbar met both Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. He met Rupa Goswami once or twice. I'm not sure. I've got to research it. But Jiva Goswami he met twice. Next. And this is the Mughal Empire. It goes all the way. This is Akbar, who met Rupa Goswami, who met Jiva Goswami. When he wanted to meet Jiva Goswami, he said, "You can't come here as a king." No. There's only one king in Vrindavan, and he's Krishna. If you take off all your royal, imagine telling this. Akbar, the Mughal Empire had 100 million people. England was 5.6 million at the same time. France had 20 million. In other words, the kingdom of Akbar went all the way up to this is Afghanistan, and it went all the way up. This is Assam over on this side. But they actually as far as Burma, the kings were all subordinate kings. They were kings. They had their kingdom, but he was the emperor. They all said tribute. They all sent soldiers. So it's the 19%, almost 20% of the world's population was under Maharaj Akbar. This is a real mind blower. 22% of the world's economy. Forget England, forget France. They were second only to China. The economy, that means the gross national product, what they were producing, goods and services and wealth and opulence and sophistication, it was 22% of the world's economy. Was Akbar's kingdom. And Rupa Goswami is telling him, hey, you can't come here like that. You come as simple, simple dhoti, simple kurta, forget your big troops, you come with a few assistants, then I'll meet you. He was so impressed, well, we'll get there in a second, but just gives you an idea of how powerful Akbar was, and he's bowing down before Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. Next. After he met Rupa Goswami, he was so impressed, Akbar, this incredibly powerful emperor, that he said, "Let me do something for you." Here's Rupa Goswami, sitting under a tree, simple loincloth, but, a profound scholar, what to speak of the deepest realizations. And Akbar's just stunned. So he's, in gratitude, he's a king, he gives. So he said, here, can I do something for you? And Rupa Goswami revealed all of Vrindavan to him, how it's all Chintamani Dham. It's all jewels. Every tree is a desire tree. And Akbar quickly calculated, it's described, that he figured, I've got, how many jewels do I have in my treasury? 2 feet of a path in Vrindavan has revealed, the real Vrindavan. I don't have enough jewels I couldn't even repair the brickwork on a path in Vrindavan with my entire treasury. So he simply folded his hands, and that was it. He couldn't offer Rupa Goswami anything. Later, anyway, we won't get into it. We'll save that for when we do Jiva Goswami. But just to give you an idea of Rupa and Jiva and the 6 Goswamis and the influence they had. These are historical records. Akbar went back to his Agra and was so impressed that at least, Rupa Goswami said, what do I need from you? Look, here's Vrindavan, here's where I'm living. Okay, nothing I can do. But what he did was he arranged to build a library. You can go there. The library at the Radha Damodar temple of Jiva Goswami, that was built by Akbar to store all the Goswami literature. And Jiva, it's a whole story. We don't have time. Next. So Raghunatha would neither hear nor speak about anything of the material world. He would simply discuss Krishna and worship the Lord day and night. Because that was his mood, therefore all of Vrindavan became revealed to the highest ecstasy of separation of the gopis. So you pay the price and you get the result. It's reciprocal. Next. He wouldn't listen to blasphemy of a Vaishnava, nor would he listen to talk of a Vaishnava's misbehavior. He knew only that everyone was engaged in Krishna's service, and he did not understand anything else. Now, if you're in the position, myself, Balaram, Vijay, sometimes you have to correct people. That's our job in the role of a teacher. We got to correct people sometimes, But if it's other than that, like the spots on the moon. Does anyone criticize the spots on the moon? It actually makes it more beautiful. So the little cloud, then it becomes very beautiful. So Raghunatha said, well, anyway, he's engaged in Krishna's service. Well, anyway, whatever it may be, I don't really want, it's not my responsibility to take care of them or train them, so I don't want to hear their faults. So this is a Vaishnava mood. Prabhupada said Vaishnava means strict with ourselves and lenient to others. We're lenient with ourselves. Hey, so what? What are you going to do about it? But, and we're very strict with others. Oh, you sneezed in the wrong direction. So I have got a magnifying glass here, just, to magnify people's faults. This is not the business of a Vaishnava. Next. Thus I've described the powerful mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by which Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami remained constantly overwhelmed in ecstatic love of Krishna. By the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became fixed in pure devotional service. We're almost done. A few more slides. Next, when Rupa Goswami stayed in Mathura, that because they didn't want the Gopal deity, beautiful Gopal deity, also installed by Krishna's grandson, great-grandson, Brajanabha. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't want to walk up on the hill. We don't put our feet on Govardhan. Govardhan's Krishna. So what to do? So there was some arrangement of the Lord that, there were some Turkish soldiers coming and they're going to raid. So they brought the deity and they hid the deity down in Mathura. So when the deity was in the town of Mathura, then they could all come for darshan because they weren't walking on Govardhan Hill. So Rupa Goswami also wanted to see the Gopal deity. But what to do? The deity. So there was some, the Turkish soldiers are coming, Muslim soldiers are coming, you can flee, you got to run. So they hid the deity. They took the deity out and hid the deity in Mathura. So at that time, when Rupa Goswami stayed in Mathura to have the darshan of Lord Gopal, he was accompanied by Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and Lokanath Das Goswami, and many other, Bhugarba Goswami. Just imagine the population of Vrindavan. All, their little bhajan kutirs and chants chant thing and writing the translated literature and getting together for having festivals. And who can imagine the association? So sometimes they all went to Vrindavan. They all went to Mathura. This is the darshan of the Gopal. This is Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill. Now this Lord Gopal, who was on the top of Govardhan Hill, is now in Rajasthan, in a town called Natwar, and he's called Srinathji. When you go to a Gujarati house, most Gujaratis, they're Vallabhacharyas, they're Acharya, and they're following Pushti Marg, which is worshipping Krishna as a cowherd boy. So this is, anyway, that's a whole story. Next. So in the latter part of his life, he lived in a small cottage in Radhakund. Radhakund didn't look like this. Radhakund originally was just, it had been lost. And they were wondering when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Vrindavan, he's bathing in a cow patty. Well, there was a rice patty, and there was a little puddle of water, and he was bathing. What's this all about? And it's a whole story when we do Raghunath. Next, what we'll do, we're doing Raghunath Bhatta this Sunday. Next Sunday, we'll do Raghunath Das Goswami, and then the following Sunday, we'll do Krishna Das Kaviraj. Because there's not enough to do justice to all three of them in one day. There's not enough time. So this Radhakund, as we see now, this was built by Raghunath Das Goswami, and there's a whole blissful story about that. But later on in his life, he lived in a small cottage in Radhakund. It was just a village in those days. Next. He was a scholar in all subjects, although he didn't write any books like the other Goswamis. And the reason that he was always crying in ecstasy, and thus the ink would run on the pages. Raghunath Bhatta Goswami learned everything simply by hearing Shastra. Prabhupada said, if you read Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there was one of the great wonders of the world, of the ancient world, 7 wonders of the world, was the library at Alexandria. And it was considered to have, like the what is that, the National Library, I've forgotten the name, it's supposed to have all the books of the world. Library of Congress. Who said that? Way to go. Library of Congress. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, we're not into book burning, don't get me wrong, but if all the books of the world, if all the books of knowledge in the world were lost, and Bhagavatam remained, nothing would be lost. Everything you need to know, everything is in the Bhagavatam. Okay, so Raghunatha Swami learned everything simply by hearing Shastras. Next. Fearing that the Muslims might desecrate Raghunath Bhatta Goswami's sacred form, Srila Jiva Goswami had his body burned. Usually the bodies of a great saints you put back into the ground because the body is considered completely purified. But in this case, they didn't want the Muslims, they're desecrating temples, so they'll dig up his body. So he had his body burned. Next. And the ashes were placed in 3 places. This is in Vrindavan. This is his, part of the ashes were put here. This is in the 64 Samadhis area in Vrindavan. And the other part of the ashes, next, they were put at Radhakund. This is the inside of his Samadhi at Radhakund. Next. In his eternal Leela in Goloka Vrindavan, he serves as Shri Rag Manjari. He's one of the Ashtashakis, the 8 Manjaris that are serving directly Srimati Radharani. It spans, anyway, that's a whole story. He's one of the Asta Manjaris, the 8 primary assistants of Srimati Radharani. That's who his eternal Leela is. Next. So may Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami bestow just a drop, even one drop of his mercy on us. So we can pray for that today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. And next Sunday we'll do Krishna Das Kaviraj and Raghunath Das Goswami. Thank you, Tapas. I appreciate it. Just remember the line we come in. So that we'll end here. But just remember this. Live up to it. We need to live up. We're not just flakes and roaming around and hippies. No, we have a noble tradition. We need to live up to it. And the other thing is, all that mercy is flowing down. We just got to stay on board the boat. Just chant Hare Krishna, serve the Vaisnavas, and all this mercy is flowing down. Hare Krishna. That's why I'm trying to drum this home to you guys.